Hey everyone, welcome back to The Ordinary. Today, we have a really special guest joining me, Dave, one of my best friends. Dave is someone who took a bold step away from the corporate grind to pursue a more personal and meaningful path, running his family's catering and tiffin business. We'll dive into his journey, the challenges of switching career paths, the societal expectations that come with such a decision, and what he's learned about himself along the way. This is going to be an inspiring and a down-to-earth conversation, so stick around. So before we get started on today's episode, just a quick thing. You might notice that Buddy's missing. Buddy's busy with her midterms, and this weekend I'm at the cottage with my friends. Dave, one of them, and Dave, what are we doing right now? Where are we sitting?
Oh, it's cold. We're in my one's sunroom, but there's lack of sun and a lot of snow everywhere.
Yeah. It's kind of a beautiful view though. Like if you look outside the sunroom, you guys can't see, but there's a kind of a snow blizzard going on. The waves are...
We're right by Lake.
Yeah, so it's a beautiful experience, but it's definitely cold. So we both have our blankets on, but before we get started, Dave, why don't you introduce yourself, who you are, quick elevator pitch about yourself.
Yeah, sure thing. I think as Jalp mentioned, my name's Dave. I'm currently 25 years old. I studied business in undergrad, so I went to school in Toronto for business, and I think I always dreamt of kind of climbing up the corporate ladder. Did a bit of a stint in consulting, and then did a very, very brief stint in strategy and operations, and then I took a risk in kind of switching gears and kind of following the entrepreneurial path, and now I am working in my family business in scaling a tiffin service provider in Toronto. So yeah, and more so in the food service business, but that's what I'm doing now.
Yeah. What do you like to do for fun?
Yeah, so outside of that, I obviously keeps me busy, but outside of that, I really enjoy hiking. So when Jalp and I, obviously we've gone on trips together for hiking and stuff like that in the summer. I enjoy cycling, and then also involved in the Munder as well.
Yeah. So some of you guys might not know Dave. Dave is a very busy person, genuine person. He keeps himself busy with his family business as well. And he makes a great effort of like staying connected with his friends and everything. Dave is probably one of the first guys I reach out to whenever I need, advice or anything. So he's a genuine person, and this is why I wanted to have him on the conversation today.
Jalp and I go like way back, grade 6, grade 7, and then I think we got a lot closer during high school.
So Dave, why don't you tell us about like your journey into the corporate world? Because if I remember correctly, when we were in grade 12, you had New York, and your wallpaper on your laptop was Manhattan building. So what was your original like plan for yourself into the future, and like what was it about the corporate world that kind of excited you?
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's glorified, right? It's glorified everywhere. Like, working in a big building, wearing a suit to work and whatnot. And I think that's the path I kind of wanted to follow. And I think I was always obsessed with kind of moving to New York City, working in a big building. And I think that is the path I took into college/university, where I was like, maybe I'll do business, but not just any business. I want to work in consulting where I can interact with C-suite executives, work on interesting work, and essentially work up the corporate ladder. And I think it's always a dream of mine to kind of move to New York City and work in a big building. And obviously looking where I am right now, very different, but I think that's a bit of maturity as well over time, but we can talk about that afterwards. So it started off there in grade. Actually, funny enough, when I was really young, I used to love watching Suits. So at one point I thought I had to stand up being a lawyer, and then realized that Suits and actual legal work is extremely different. But yeah, I went into business and then realized I think it would be consulting if I want to do something, just because you get to work on interesting problems and unique situations. So kind of pursued that path in consulting, and then worked in consulting for a bit. And I guess it's 2025 now. I'm not in New York City, but I think I'm definitely happy with where I am in Toronto now.
Yeah. What about consulting initially kind of drew you?
Yeah, I think it was the fact that I'm also the type of person kind of gets bored very easily doing the same thing over and over again.
Yeah.
I do kind of get bored of it. I think consulting was the opportunity where I can work on different and interesting projects. Mm-hmm. At least that's how they usually market consulting.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, you're going to be working on very interesting different projects, working with C-suite executives and whatnot. The reality and what your market might be different at times. But I think that's what kind of attracted me to it. And also another big point that attracted me to consulting was the fact of traveling. I've always enjoyed traveling, and I thought, oh, maybe I can combine traveling and work. Never did a travel project, but from my friends who have worked in consulting, traveling for work and traveling for leisure are completely two different things.
Yeah.
But I think that's what initially attracted me. So I think I was heads down, gung ho about consulting, all the way until like fourth year. I think that was the main thing I was kind of targeting. And even though when I had the opportunity to kind of look into the family business or just kind of start thinking of the entrepreneurial journey, I can't put that to the side just because I'm like, no, consulting is what I want to do. And maybe it's also because of what people expect, right? People expect like, oh, if you work in such and such field, you're successful or you're quote unquote successful.
Yeah.
So maybe it might have been external pressure, external environments that might have led me to that. But yeah, that's what kind of led me into consulting.
Yeah. And since I've also went to business school, when you're in business school, there's kind of like it's like a tier system. Like, okay, like,
Oh yeah.
like, okay, if you're in consulting, like this is what your tier level is. If you're in investment banking, this is what your tier level is. If you're at the big four, this is what your tier level is. So even though people might not like vocalize it, there's some sort of like societal clout
Yeah.
associated with working in some of these corporate, positions, right? So I know you worked at a couple of great companies, did some work in private equity consulting. You don't have to name drop your companies, but how was that experience and like what did you learn from that?
Yeah, I think the importance of working hard. Obviously, you learned that before as well, but just like that, there's times where you're not gonna have time for yourself, but you just gotta put your head down and kind of get work done. So definitely learned a lot about that. Learned a lot about PowerPoint, Excel. We did some work on due diligence, commercial due diligence, and then post-acquisition growth strategies. So it was fun work. It was interesting work and fun work, but I think the main thing I kind of learned was the importance of, obviously they're technical because like data, how you look at data, how like the importance of data, like storytelling through data and whatnot, but the importance of kind of managing your time on the different tasks that you have. You're not gonna be able to finish everything in a day, and sometimes if you want, you're gonna have to stay up. So the sacrifices as well. So kind of was able to kind of experience that firsthand.
Yeah. And to someone listening who might not have a big business background or don't know what consulting, especially in the private equity industry was, to keep it simple, what they would do is that, okay, this company is interested in like, buying another company. Is it worth buying it? So that due diligence process is kind of determining, okay, is this a good target for us to buy that company? And then that post-acquisition growth strategy basically means like, okay, once we buy it, how can we make more money out of it? And obviously, how can we improve the business? How can we grow it, right? So from a young, not a young, I mean, we're still young. Yeah, we're still young. But from the beginning standpoint, you were always kind of interested in problem solving, I would say. Like, okay, I see a business. How can I make this business better? How can I improve it? Right. So was that the reason why you kind of decided to switch over to your family business, or was there something else?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. So I think going back to your last question, I just want to mention one more point of why consulting. I think a big portion is clout, but you only recognize that like a few years afterwards or once you remove yourself from the situation. Where what was my motivators driving that? And I think it is like, if you're in consulting, if you're doing like, work with private equity firms on diligence and whatnot, at least for the people who work in it, you're classified, oh, you're hardworking, you're smart, you're doing something good, right?
Yeah.
Or like you're an overachiever, or like we're achieving great things. So I think that is definitely something subtly that I was working towards. Like I wanted to have approval from others, right?
Yeah.
So maybe that might have been another motivator as well. I think it's very easy to fall into that, especially when you're in business school, when it's all about, oh, what are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing? And kind of comparing yourself with others. But
yeah,
that's just a side note. But definitely a motivator as well, to be honest. In terms of what brought me to the family business, I feel like it's more so an opportunity that I kind of just noticed. My mom had been operating this business. Again, it was just a very small mom and pop shop. She'd been operating it for a few years, and she was thinking of, hey, we should kind of start scaling it and kind of get into a bigger facility to meet up with demand. And by that time, I was always busy with work. I used to help out on the weekends when possible. And that's when I actually also started a new job working in strategy and operations at a fintech company. And I think that's when I'm like, okay, cool. I can help you look for location where we want to expand to. So then we're looking. And then a few months down the road, actually a lot longer of a process, but
Yeah.
fast forward, we found a place, and then we went through the acquisition process of the facility to kind of increase capacity and supply, and to meet up with demand. And I think that is when I realized, like, I don't want, like, I want to be involved in something
Mm-hmm.
ground up where I have full autonomy in making decisions that can drive impact.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what kind of helped me. Because, again, I think all roles you can create impact and have value and whatnot, but I think I was just a lot more interested in, like, hey, like, it's something I can build up with however I want and with the intention I have. And I think I just saw an opportunity where a lot of these food service businesses, such as tiffin businesses or catering businesses, are operated by moms and dads who are in their mid-40s, mid-50s.
Yeah.
And because of that, they might be great cooks, they might be great chefs, but what they might not have is, like, the business savviness, maybe, right?
Mhm.
Of how you want to kind of market the products to kind of get to the target audience, or how you kind of incorporate tech or automation to kind of help with reducing labor cost.
Yeah.
And all these different things we obviously learn about in business school.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of saw an opportunity where I can really come in. It's a business where I am going to have, like, my parents have full trust in me, where I can make those decisions and kind of see the impact of it. So I think that is what I noticed.
Mm-hmm.
And after buying the facility, I realized this is something I want to kind of continue doing and kind of scale it out and see where it goes. So that's in 2023. I made the decision of 2023 June. I made the decision of full-time converting and switching into the entrepreneurial journey.
Yeah, so when I know originally when you were working on your family business, you were working on the side,
Yeah.
or like even when you decided to leave your work, you were still kind of looking for work while doing the family business. What happened, or like when did it click to you? Like, okay, you know what, this is the path for me. This is what I want to do. Was there a specific experience, or was there like a thought, a realization?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I feel like it was over time. It wasn't just like I woke up one day and I realized, hey, no, I'm gonna go full steam ahead with this. It was more so over time, I think, and also I think it's a lot of luck, and the grace of God, to be honest, of where opportunities kind of line up and how they line up. For example, I feel like I was asked by the place I was working at. I was initially a remote worker, but they asked me to move to Chicago, and I said no. So therefore, I resigned thereafter because I want to work on this. So then after I resigned, I'm like, okay, I'll still look for work, maybe 1 or 2 months down the road,
Mm-hmm.
once the construction is kind of going as planned and whatnot. So I'm still looking every now and then, but I feel like it really clicked me when I started working on kind of expanding through different service areas.
Mm-hmm.
So for some context, anyone who doesn't know about tiffins or catering is, imagine it to be like a ready-to-eat meal kit that you get prepared for dinner. So the target audience for this are individuals who are either students, so who have busy work schedules and might not have the capability or time to actually make the food, or work adults where you have a couple who are both working ambitious corporate jobs, right? Kind of keeping you busy 9 to 5, 9 to 6. And the last thing you want to do is to, when you come home, kind of spend time in boiling food, boiling potatoes, or making food and whatnot.
Yeah.
So I think that's where the tiffin comes in, where it's a ready-to-eat meal kit. You don't have to do anything; it's delivered to you. And the differentiator between this and a restaurant, it's home-cooked food, right? So it's low preservatives, it's a lot more healthy, it's a lot more fresh. So I think what we did, the first thing I did was, when starting as construction was going on with our current facility and current capabilities, we were working on expanding service areas. So I started servicing Mississauga and Brampton and North York.
Yeah.
So I started working on that, and in the starting, I couldn't hire drivers. I had to do all that myself. So obviously, I would be the one driving from North York all the way to Mississauga, all the way to Brampton.
Yeah, to give you guys some context on that, me and Dave would be on phone calls while I'll be working, and they would be doing deliveries in his car. You can see, like, from where they started and where they are now, like, it is a ground up business where everything that you see currently, it's all has been possible because of obviously his mom's hard work, your dad's hard work, and obviously your hard work. So I want to give you the credit where you deserve.
No, I appreciate it. Thank you, Joel. But I think, like, kind of doing that, I realized, like, I can put as much hard work I want into this, and I can see the fruition out of it, right? I can see the return on investment a lot closer than any other opportunity I may have. And I think that is when it clicked, like, hey, like, initially I was like, I'll set it up and I'll kind of go back to corporate, and I'll spend some time on the business on the side after work, or depending on how busy work would be.
Yeah.
But then I realized, like, instead of doing that, why don't I fully focus on that and just try to scale it as much as possible? Because this is an opportunity where I feel like I speak to my mom, like we have this advantage where it's an entire family kind of dedicated to this. We have people like my mom's an amazing chef, right? My dad's amazing at the work he does. And then I'm able to bring the more, the usefulness, right? The usefulness insights that can kind of really provide the best service and best product to customers. So then kind of while we expanded service areas, that's when I realized this is just the beginning. Like we started in Mississauga and then North York, like York University, and then Brampton North.
Yeah.
I'm like, outside of that, let's do other areas. Let's do other products. Let's do other services. So I think it just kind of snowballed into that. And after one point, I realized like, maybe like this is what I want to do. This is like, it's a lot of hard work, right? It's no way as easy as people think it is at times in entrepreneurship, or its own challenges compared to corporate. But I realized this is what I want to kind of go forward with and kind of take the risk.
Yeah, so as you mentioned that there are some challenges that you face, like what are some of the challenges that you realize, like, okay, number one, this is completely different from the corporate world, or when transitioning from a corporate environment to a more entrepreneurship environment, what are some challenges that you weren't kind of prepared for or you faced?
Yeah, I think that's almost like face challenges almost every day, right? But I can first talk about the technical problems or challenges. I come from obviously a strategy background where it's more so, hey, this is the issue, this is what you should be doing, and this is how you could do it. And you give to the client, like, hey, now go do it.
Yeah.
But now it's more so, this is the issue, what's the strategy, but what's implementation like? And I think that is a big a shift in mindset I have to bring, where I realized in execution or in achieving anything, strategy is 1% and implementation is almost 99%. Regardless of how great your strategy is, if your implementation isn't as solid or as good as it should be, the strategy is not going to work. And implementing is so hard. Implementation is actually so difficult because there's so many nuances that you might expect but are not going to work out. So,
yeah.
For example, just using logistics and delivery for as an example here, kind of expanding into an area, like, okay, cool, we're going to have this area, but in order to actually enter this area, we first need to make sure that we have the demand for the area, right? So how are we going to market it? So I set up the marketing stuff, right? Kind of different marketing campaigns, reach outs, social media and whatnot. And then you have that, but at the same time, you need to make sure your supply is there. But outside of supply, you also need to make sure your drivers are there. Now, let's say a driver does it 1 or 2 days, and then during his probationary period, he's like, yeah, he doesn't really want to continue with this, or it's not as expected, right? Then it throws the entire thing off, and I have to find someone else, right? And that's just one small part of the entire process. And then you combine it with other services or other products that you have or other areas. There's a lot of complexities in that, but it's all about implementation, right? And implementation never ends. That's one thing I realized, like, if I do something new, I started, it's working, perfect. But there's always going to be nuances or wrinkles into it where I always have to address the issues for that thereafter. So I think that's a very big thing I had to realize, where strategy is important, but implementation is a lot more important. So, and I think that's a shift in my abilities and my mindset, because I do come from more of a strategic background. So I have a lot of more respect for people who do implementation and in entrepreneurship.
Yeah, like it's so easy to say like, oh, you should grow in that area because there's a huge demand. But I think I've seen you, because I've been with you over there, like when Dave, for example, is deciding to grow in an area, he goes there himself, drives there, walks around. We've also went to a campus. If you remember, we went to a random campus, acted like we were students there, just to see like, okay, who's marketing here? Are there any different businesses that are already popular here? Because we all come from business backgrounds. You do a case study like, oh, this is the initiative that they should implement, or like they should do this, X, Y, Z. But actually doing it, that's a whole different ball game.
And you also have to, like, with that, you have to have a lot of patience, right?
Yeah.
I think, at least coming back from a corporate background where you work on projects, once the project's done, you're kind of done with it. But in this, if a product, for example, if an area that I thought was high potential based on like stats or based on my insights, if it's not rolling out, I can't just like close shop in that area and move on, right? Again, we're just using areas as an example here in our conversation, but I can't just move on. Or even if I do another product, just because it's not working for 3-4 months, I can't just move on. And I think that's the difference in, I hear their term fail fast very often on different podcasts I listen to sometimes. And I think that might be a fair term for maybe technology, but in something like a physical product,
Yeah.
especially food. Sometimes you gotta let it simmer, right? You gotta let it simmer and wait for um that point in turn where you do start getting traction. So I think it's a lot of patience as well, where you have to give it an investment, you have to give it time.
Mm-hmm.
You have to let organic growth happen,
Mm-hmm.
where it might just be 4 or 5 or 10, right? But let
Mm-hmm.
that organic growth happen where it becomes a lot more thereafter. If I just, for example, when I used to do it, if I just stopped after 2 or 3 months just because I didn't see results,
Yeah.
it would have been a very different picture, right? But it's about being patient, like it's going to work out because you're confident in what you're selling
Mm-hmm.
and the type of service that we give, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're confident that it's a good service, it's a good product that's fair price and good quantity and it's fresh,
Mm-hmm.
or it's going to work out. So you just got to give it time. So I think that's another big thing of kind of being patient with it instead of
Yeah.
rushing through stuff.
Yeah. Another thing that I want to know about is that, in a corporate world nowadays, we all kind of work from home or hybrid or something. You log on to work. Once it hits that time where like it's 5 or like, everyone's logging off, the day is done. And then you kind of turn that part of your brain off and then you go on, enjoy the rest of your evening, right? So how did you deal with those challenges, or how did your lifestyle change after the corporate world, right? Because obviously I know that's not the case, but like if you want to talk about that.
Yeah, I think in that sense, like work unfortunately does not end, right?
Yeah.
There's no end to work. I feel like in corporate, if once I log off or once I close my computer, unless I get a Teams message, I wouldn't go back on.
Yeah.
Because I know I'm done for the day. I can do whatever I want. In this, anything can happen at any time, right? For example, and which means like I'm always thinking about work, which
Yeah.
obviously is unhealthy at times. But this is a work in progress. I have not perfected any of this stuff. I'm still a student, right? In whatever I'm doing, I'm always learning. So I'm still figuring it out and kind of making sure there is that balance. But just because I'm done for the day, it's 6 or 7 p.m. There's 3, 4, 5 other things I'm thinking of the next day or for the next week that we're working on. To provide an example, it was 4 p.m., 4:30 p.m. 2 weeks ago. I think it was a Tuesday or Wednesday, and then we got a call from our driver where he got rear-ended.
Yeah.
Right, he got rear-ended, and I'm located by the northwest end, so it's by Rexdale and Kipling, and he was by Brimley and Eglinton. That's deep in Scarborough.
Yeah.
4 p.m. and he said, I just got rear-ended. I have X amount of meals left to deliver. And I'm like, oh shoot, how are we gonna get this delivered? Because we can't just say for our customer, like, hey, you're not getting your meal. That's not fair for the customers either.
Yeah.
So then myself and our operations manager, we leave. So we get our operations manager to kind of start messaging all our customers, through Twilio and automated message, like, hey, please expect you to receive your meals a bit late today just because of an emergency. While he's doing that, I leave. I go straight on the 407 so I can even get there as soon as possible.
Yeah.
Because it's not just like, hey, I want to finish the workday soon. It's also people need to get their meals on time as well. So I leave on the 407, get on the 407, then get on to TVP or 404 and go all the way to Brimley and Eglinton. And then I take most of the meals and I start delivering them myself. That goes from, I get there by 5:30, which is usually for anyone working, that's the end of the day. They're kind of done with the day.
Yeah.
That's literally just sort of a lot of stuff we're starting from. And then I go throughout all of Scarborough and Don Mills, delivering meals. And I wrap up at 7:55, 8 p.m. And then I get home and I still need to address all the stuff for the next day and making sure that we're ready.
Yeah.
And that's just like our day-to-day operation. That doesn't include special projects or initiatives that we kind of want to start, or even thinking of marketing or branding and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So because of that, it doesn't really end. The work doesn't end. But what I've started doing is kind of making sure I figure out what is the most important thing for me, and I make sure I put that into my calendar or into my day, regardless of what's happening. So one thing was I really enjoy cycling. Right?
Yeah.
So I know for a fact I have it in my calendar where at 7 p.m. So 7 p.m. to 7:30, regardless of what happens, unless I'm sick or I'm not in town, or if there's an emergency, I am gonna cycle for 30 minutes.
Yeah.
If I have calls, I'll take a call while I'm cycling, right? I'll figure work out while I'm cycling, but I am gonna cycle. Or I have a tendency of going to the mandir, right?
Yeah.
Temple at 8 p.m. every day, right? I think that's like my me time. So unless, again, unforeseen circumstance, I am going to absolutely do that. I think that's one thing I'm realizing where before I didn't do that, and I think I got a lot more burnt out because of it. But it's very important you put those non-negotiables in your like day
Schedule.
in your schedule, where if you like the stuff that you want to do, you absolutely do regardless of what's happening.
Yeah, 100%.
To make yourself feel sane, or you are going to go insane. And I think I do give a lot of credit to Jalp for that as well. Like I think because of work, because of everything that's happening, I've been kind of getting a lot busier as well. But I think I've very fortunate to have extremely supportive friends who call me saying, hey, like we haven't heard from you for a while, or how you been, or hey, make sure you come out to like this event or whatever we're doing, make sure you come hang out with us. Even for this exact like cottage trip, like there's so many things happening. I'm like, maybe I should stay back in Toronto on Saturday and Sunday, kind of put my head down, get some work done, so I can kind of lighten up my week thereafter. But I was convinced like, hey, it's important also to take time out to hang out and just kind of get your mind off of stuff. So I was able to do that. So I do thank my friends for that as well. But I think to answer your question, that's how you kind of balance your schedule. At least that's how I'm trying to balance my schedule. I'm learning as well from it.
Yeah, and like I know when we went to Vancouver, even on our hikes, you would get calls like, "Hey, I want to change my TIFF into this," or like, "Hey, can I place an order?" Or like the drivers would be like, "Hey, I don't feel like doing this." So like, 100%. So anyone listening, and like this is something that I learned from observing Dave's life and experience, is that a lot of time us in the corporate world, we think that, okay, man, I wish I had my own business and like life will be easier, it'll be much more smoother. It's not the case. You're kind of choosing your challenges. When you're in the corporate world, you will be facing with the corporate world challenges. When you're doing the entrepreneurship world, you're going to be facing those challenges. So you kind of have to ask yourself what challenges I'm willing to accept and what reward you're getting from them to make your decision. But Dave, another question I had for you is that after this switch, were there any moments where you felt like you kind of were regretting leaving the corporate world, or you had some self-doubt? And what did you do in those moments to kind of handle it?
Yeah, I feel like definitely like I had moments where I'm like, oh shoot, like I'm really taking a path like really less often traveled, especially at my age.
Yeah.
Compared to people I know, at least, right? A lot of my friends, for example, you, Job, all my friends are more so in the corporate world, right? And there was weird because it was during that time, like maybe 6 months into this, where I'm still on LinkedIn, so I get a notification like, oh, X person just got promoted. Or X person and I'm like, oh shoot, like
I hate LinkedIn.
Yeah, it can be very toxic. But like I'm like, oh shoot, like that's great for him. But I'm like, and what am I really doing, right? I don't have any position. I'm not getting promoted or anything.
Yeah.
Right. So it's very easy to kind of get into that rabbit hole and kind of start doubting about it. And I remember I was talking to my mom about this as well. And my mom really she put it very simply and put it really well. So, just because it's, like it's a road less traveled, it's not a wrong road, right?
Yeah.
It's up to me to evaluate how I'm feeling about this, but I shouldn't base my decision based on how I think others would perceive it, or how I feel like what others are doing, right? I should base it decision based on how I'm feeling. So I think I have come to terms with it that it's a road less traveled, but I think I'm fine with that because I'm also getting super unique opportunities. I'm learning about things which I feel like if I was in the corporate side, I would not have really had the chance to do, like negotiating stuff, like talking with wholesalers, talking with distributors. A lot of these opportunities which we learn about in school, or strategies that we learn about in school, I'm getting to really like implement it like firsthand. So it is different, very different. And 100% I have had doubts, and sometimes every now and then they still kind of creep in, but I'm confident that just because it's different doesn't mean it's wrong.
Yeah.
Right? So just taking it day by day.
So how did people around you kind of react to that switch? Like, did you feel some sort of like societal pressure? Like, how would you explain it to your friends, right? Maybe like your close friends like us, we kind of understand. But like, well, how about people outside of that, right? How did they react to it? Did they kind of understand what you were doing?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I think that's a very heavy question. But how would people react? Now, all my friends are super supportive, right? And they know that if I'm going to make a decision, I've obviously thought about the decision, right? Obviously, all my friends did ask me, like, hey, have you considered X, Y, and Z before making the decision? And I'm always appreciative of that. Even Jalp, right? We had that conversation before. and everyone's been super supportive. Most importantly, my parents have been super supportive. But now everyone else, so outside of my close friend group,
Yeah.
my family, people every now and then ask me, "Hey, what are you doing?" Right? And I mentioned, "Hey, I'm working on this, the tiffin business." Now, as I mentioned earlier in our conversation, tiffin is something that people think it's a mom and pop thing, kind of done by a mom and a dad,
Yeah.
and they're usually in the late 50s, and they're kind of getting to an older age, so that's why they work on it. Might not be a lot. It might not be something that you can scale, right? It might not be something I can kind of create an entire career on. So when I do mention it to people, I remember some people ask me, "Okay, I'm working on this." A lot of people mention, "Hey, you went to school, you were working consulting, and you're doing this now, right? Like make sure you look for other jobs and stuff like that. Like this is good for now, but you always look like be on the lookout and stuff like that."
Yeah.
And I feel like it was almost like maybe I'm reading into this, and I do be a chronic overthinker sometimes, but it was almost like, "Hey, you could do better," right? Or like, "We expected better from you." And at times that in the early beginning, it got to me sometimes, but then I realized like they can't really understand because they don't know the numbers behind it. Only I see the vision and the numbers behind it, so I can make that call. I can make the call on the data that I see, which makes sense or it doesn't make sense. So I feel like that was a big portion, but then I realized they can't really understand the situation I'm in because they're not in that situation. So it's fair for them to judge that, but I need to take it with a grain of salt.
Yeah.
And then sometimes when people ask, and if they're not really close with me, to be honest, even to this day, if people ask me, "Hey, what are you doing?" and stuff like that, I mean, I'm still looking for a job. I just say that. I say that.
Yeah.
A lot of people like if I'm not close with someone and they ask me, and if I don't know them well enough, I'll say, "Hey, I'm looking for a job. Let me know if you have any job openings." Am I really looking for a job? I'm not looking for a job, but sometimes just to get people off my back, I say that. But in terms of societal pressure, like it's been during those conversations where I feel like, oh shoot, like they expected something out of me, something better out of me, and maybe I might not be able to do that. But I think if I let societal pressure kind of get to me, then I'm not gonna be able to really enjoy what I want to do, because at the end of the day, we have to live our own life, right?
Yeah, and like some people who probably don't know you well enough or don't know the business well enough, they just might think that like, okay, this guy is unemployed and he's just doing something on the side, right? To make ends meet. But like, I know that's definitely not the case, right? You're running an actual business, and like you have future projects that you're working on, which are interesting. You are, trying to scale this as much as you can. I don't think people have a bad intention most of the time. They're probably like, okay, I hope you find something that you're looking for. But they don't realize you have found something that you are kind of looking for.
Exactly. And kind of you mentioned something about challenge, like I like solving challenge, and I think a core issue that I saw in this challenge was no one, at least from what I've seen, at least in North America maybe, no one's been able to actually successfully scale tiffins, right? No one's been able to scale tiffins where it's more than just a mom and pop shop in a small area. So I think that's a challenge in itself that I want to kind of address, right? That's a challenge that I'm kind of working towards, and figuring out how you can scale, like kind of unlocking that potential for that business. Because you see something like everything is scalable, right? Everything is scalable if done well. Like for example, Amazon was scalable. It was just a bookshop, right?
Yeah.
Scalable. Uber Eats, a lot of these even brick and mortar shops, right? Like for example, I always think about McDonald's. McDonald's was just like a burger shop. But look at McDonald's now, or even Starbucks, just a coffee shop. Look at Starbucks now.
Yeah.
Scalable, right? So scaling has its own challenges, but it's not as impossible. It is challenging.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's something I keep in mind as well.
Yeah, and you rather like continue trying and challenging yourself to push your limits than like settle for something that doesn't make you happy, right? So the next question I have for you is, what is something you learned about yourself after making this career switch that you didn't know that you had it in you?
Yeah, I think one thing I definitely realized was I'm not the best at implementation. I think, and that is because I've always been kind of wired, even during school, high school, university, and a few years after that. And even extracurriculars I do, it's more so strategy and overall planning, right?
Yeah.
It's not like being nitty gritty, getting your hands dirty, right?
Yeah.
So that's a big thing I'm learning about myself, right? So I feel like I'm 10 times better than I was in 2023, but I still have a long way to go to become like a good operator and not just a good, like a strategic mind, right? So that's a big thing. outside of that, I think it's also me learning how to balance my own expectations and my time. So obviously we talked about kind of scheduling and whatnot. And I think in 2020, towards the end of 2024, I started taking that a lot more seriously.
Yeah.
And also level setting my own expectations. Like there's so many things I want to do. And I feel like multitasking is not really, I think it's a myth. I don't think people can actually multitask successfully.
Yeah, I
Or
agree.
if people can't, I'm just not one of those people, right? So there's like 10 things I'm always interested in, right? But I think my goal towards the end of 2024 and into 2025 is instead of working on 10% of 10 different things during the day, I will want to work 100% on one thing or 50% on two things as my energy.
Yeah.
To kind of make sure I can push it forward. So I think that's one thing I'm kind of still learning and kind of figuring out in the process.
Yeah. And, as we kind of come to a conclusion, I want to ask you, if someone is in a place and they're listening to this and they feel like, okay, maybe I want to take a risk, I want to leave the corporate world, what is one advice you would kind of give to them?
Yeah, I feel like it'd be listen to yourself, right? Listen to yourself, but don't make the decision based on others' experiences. Just because of this conversation, if you feel like, oh, I want to leave the corporate, I want to quit my job now, make sure it's based on your own experience or own judgment, not just based on listening to others' experiences. Because again, this is just like a 20-30 minute conversation, right? Everyone lives like hundreds of hours of lives, right? So you just see highlights, right?
Yeah.
Small snippets. And I think that is social media in general as well,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Where we don't like, at least in social media, we only see the best side of everything. But if you genuinely feel like leaving the corporate world, and you have a plan, then I feel like this is the best time to do it because we're young. Right?
Yeah.
We're young. At least for me, I don't have obviously now I have responsibility of the business, but outside of the business responsibility, I don't have a kid. Right? I don't have those typical responsibilities that people usually have in their 30s. For example, there's a lot of people I talk to, they mention, oh, I'm going to start a business in my 30s or mid 30s. But then that's definitely possible. For me, for example, if I want to do that, it'd be a lot more harder for me because hypothetically, if at that time I had kids, right, I had a house mortgage and stuff like that, I would think about all those things as well.
Harder to take risks.
Exactly. You become a lot more risk averse. Whereas during this age, you can take those risks. You can kind of try something else out. And if you feel like you want to do it, but you're afraid because you're in a corporate setting or what are people going to say or what are people going to think, I think that's the last thing you need to worry about, right? Because you just got to put your head down and kind of try your best for something. And if it doesn't work out, that's still fine. You still learn something new.
Yeah.
And if it works out, then you're kind of set.
Yeah. Better to try than not try at all. Right?
Exactly. And just give it your best shot and try your best.
Yeah. So last question for you. Dave, obviously you're more than just your business. So what are some personal goals you have or things that you're looking forward to or visions that you have for yourself in the next maybe 5 to 10 years? I know this is sounding like an interview question, but just for fun. It doesn't have to be something super serious, but things that you're looking forward to.
Yeah. I feel like I want to be fit physically, which obviously I get through cycling, but I just want to make sure I remain fit and healthy as I grow older because I feel like there's so many experiences in life you can only experience if you're healthy, right?
Yeah, and especially the things that we like doing.
Exactly. And exactly, even as simple as going on walks. I don't want to be in my 30s and have back pain while I'm walking and stuff like that. But I think fit and healthy, not just physically, but mentally as well. Or just having some more mental clarity in what I'm working towards and what I want to achieve. Whether that is through the business, what it's through personal, or what that is spiritually as well. Kind of making sure I'm grounded in that because it's so easy to get kind of overwhelmed with everything or kind of like into a rabbit hole for something and you envision life to be a certain way. But I kind of want to make sure I'm grounded in what my ultimate goal are for everything. For my ultimate goal for the entrepreneurship journey, my ultimate goal for my family life and personal life, my and my spiritual life, right? My ultimate goal for that. I kind of make sure I remain grounded for that. And I think those are a few big things. Let me see if I can think of anything else in terms of where I see myself in 5 to 10 years. That's a very loaded question. But and most importantly, making more memories, right? I think like life is great as the memories we have, right? For example, the reason why this is an iconic trip that for all the listeners, we had with all our friends. There was like 13 of us. Yeah. Climbing up a mountain in Guatemala.
Volcano.
Oh yeah, a volcanic like mountain.
Yeah.
it was dormant, but dormant volcanic mountain in Guatemala to see a volcano actually erupt.
Yeah.
Briefly, but the reason why it's why I have these memories is not because of what I did or what was happening. It was not just because of the hike was hard, or the hike was tremendously hard. I had altitude sickness, or I had a headache. But why do I remember that trip so fondly? It's because of the people I did it with. It's the memories I made. I think that's a big thing. I want to continue making and cherishing great memories in all ways, right? Especially through friends and family as well. I don't want that to stop. I think making more memories with friends and family, I think that's a big thing.
No, I agree 100%. Dave, thank you so much once again, brother. I think your story is such a powerful reminder that it's okay to take risks. It's okay to face challenges and kind of challenge the societal norms and pursue what feels right for you. I hope this episode inspires you to reflect on your own path and consider what truly brings you fulfillment. If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure to subscribe and share with a friend. Until next time, this is Jalp signing off from The Ordinary. See you soon.
Bye.